Good morning. It's a pleasure to be able to share some of my story with you today. I come from a good family. It's just that for the most part, my childhood was a source of anguish to me. For example, in my 8th grade year, I remember this cool looking guy stand in front of me, and all he said with a smirk was, against my better judgment, I said, "What?" Well, he just stood over me and he did tower over me, and he said, "You are so short." Well, I was trying to combat it the best way I knew how, and I said, "So?" Well, he answered my non-question, and he said, "Man, it must suck to be you. You do know that every girl in this school thinks you're a joke, right?" It's like, "You're never going to get a girlfriend. You're never going to get married. Girls don't want some midget. They want a man." It's like, man, no offense, but if I was you, I would just blow out my brains. I had no comeback. And I tried to think of one. In fact, all I could do was just turn around and walk away as he and his 3 friends just shook their head and smirked at me. But I soon came to realize or believe that he was just the only one honest enough to tell me the whole truth that everybody else knew anyway. The 8th grade, like the 7th grade, dragged on with a lot of devastating blows to my soul. But in spite of that, somehow I still finished the year as the top student academically, but I couldn't maintain that. In the 9th grade, the only reason I didn't fail was because of the kindness of my teachers, and it didn't hurt that my dad was the faculty sponsor of the National Honor Society. But every day I was in this deep depression, and every day I planned that this was the last day that I would spend on earth. But aside from school, my mother and my brothers provided me this much better life. And my dad had left our house when I was 10. But the ridicule and bigotry because of my height, something I could do nothing about, was coming at me since the first day of 1st grade. And in that emotional anguish, I decided to read a book that my favorite teacher had on display in her room. This book was promoting atheism and evolution and the idea that all religion was just a delusion. And I let that book just carry me to where I really kind of wanted to go anyway, because I kept having the thought, if there was a God, why did he just make me this object of ridicule? And my newfound atheism just gave me an identity. And it gave me a feeling of dignity that I'd never felt before, in that I knew I was right, and all these people that had ridiculed me and rejected me, who I assumed were all part of a church youth group, were wrong. But my atheism was pretty much useless in helping me overcome this constant feeling of hopelessness. About 1.5 years later, I decided that I should start reading the Bible that my dad had given me, so I could debate those idiots on their own terms. So I started reading John, like somebody suggested, and I dutifully read blah, 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 until I got to this point where Jesus said, "I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will not be walking in darkness, but will have the light of life." And I stopped reading. And I said out loud, "What kind of egomaniac says that?" And I just threw the Bible into the bed, and I quit. I had lost all respect for Jesus. It was crazy what he just said. Even the next day, those words were bugging me, until I had this thought. It was mixed with fear and fascination, and I thought, wait, who does he think he is? And I ran back and I picked the Bible off the floor, and I just kept reading right through the last 13 chapters of John. And I did have to admit reluctantly at that point, well, maybe I can understand how a weak-minded person might get sucked into this Christianity thing. But another 1.5 years later, I started reading another book, an evangelistic book that my father had placed strategically on the coffee table in his house, and I read it through in one sitting the day before my senior year in high school. And I found myself wishing I could just disengage my brain and follow this man, Jesus. But then the book started dealing with the prophecies that Jesus fulfilled. His birth, how do you fulfill that prophecy? His ministry, his death on a cross, and his resurrection. And then it just hit me like the prophecies that Jesus fulfilled. And then it seemed like magic. These words came back to me. I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will not be walking in darkness, but will have the light of life. Well, my last objection had just been overcome. And I realized I am dealing with absolute truth. And I did the only thing I could think of, the only logical response. I knelt down and believing that Jesus had died for me and rose from the dead, I gave my life without reservation to Jesus Christ. And even that night, I chased down my brother Daniel, who had actually run out of the house intending to run away. And I spoke at length to him about how I loved him, which we've never really gotten along that well, and about Jesus and the Bible. And he kept looking at me with confusion, like, isn't he an atheist? But eventually, he also became a Christian, and he was baptized in the very place that I eventually was. But a few years later, after that, after my brother Daniel's very untimely death of undiagnosed diabetes, my mother and my older brother Michael also became followers of Jesus. But that school year, I became the senior class vice president, and I got the lead in the senior play. And I had friends that I actually hung out with, and I built convictions based on the Bible. And for the first time in my life, I just had this unceasing, real joy. And since then, I've gotten a college degree. I've served in the Navy. I've served on staff with ministries. And I've been married to a wonderful woman for 22 years now. And I have 2 sons and 2 daughters who are a blessing all day, every day. It's just that lately I've just been getting this strong sense that my life in Christ is about to have a new beginning, and I cannot wait.
Yeah.